The first 20 minutes will be question and answer with things that have been submitted live online the past 6 months by students, and then we'll open it up to the audience. We have these 2 microphones in the aisles, and we'll ask you to come up one at a time to ask questions to our panelists, and then it's an hour long. And if you have any questions remaining at the end, you can submit them online, and we will ask them at the next panel. And these are all live broadcast, so if there's a question that you really wanted to hear their feedback on and you didn't get it answered, you can submit it online, Twitter, on our webpage. Our hashtag is UCDPHSA14. We have a lot of students combing through everything that is posted and compiling the most popular questions to make sure that they are asked at the next panel. So without further ado, I'm going to have our first panelist on my left, and then in the order going further down, introduce themselves, their names, their institution, and something core to the mission of their institution. So begin.
Good morning. My name is Christian Essman. I'm the Director of Admissions at the Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine in Cleveland, Ohio. I've been at Case Western for almost 10 years now. As I said, we're located in Cleveland, Ohio, along the tropical shores of Lake Erie. And we've been there for a long time, about 170 years. I think nationally, our university is known primarily for its reputation in research. We're the largest biomedical research institution in the state of Ohio. So it's a very rich environment for those people who are interested in research. But we also have kind of the best of the both worlds going on when it comes to clinical training. We're partnered with some of the best hospitals in the country, including the Cleveland Clinic, the second largest VA in the country. University hospitals we're physically attached to, which is a classic academic institution, and then a county-owned hospital that serves as our public safety net and our trauma center. We don't have just one pathway to an MD at Case Western. We essentially have 3. We have a 4-year MD program, a 5-year research-focused program, and an 8-year MD Ph.D. program. Students can apply to 1 or all 3 if they'd like. And when it comes to our admissions process, we last year received 6,400 applications from around the country. We're a private allopathic medical school, so we don't have an in-state admissions quota, so that's pertinent to this audience. I don't know if there are any Ohioans here today. Okay. So as a matter of fact, about 20% of our application pool is generally comprised of Californians, and about a third of our class is comprised of Californians or students from other warmer climates. So just keep that in mind. Our educational environment is one that we want to foster collaborative learning and a collegial environment. We don't have grades the first 2 years. It's pass-fail, and it very much is an environment built on small group case-based learning throughout the entire first 2 years. So it's an environment that really supports a happy, collegial, supportive group of students.
Good morning. My name is Pat Samuelson. I'm from the University of Rochester School of Medicine and Dentistry in Rochester, New York. I'm Director of Admissions there. I think one of the hallmarks of the medical school is the biopsychosocial model, which was founded here many years ago now. But it does permeate everything we do, our teaching, our curriculum, our student body. And that's really looking at the patient. Illness does occur in molecules, cells, and so forth, but those are in a person. And so we look at the whole person, their gender, their ethnicity, their socioeconomic status, their faith, their family, their culture, and we pay equal attention to the art of medicine as well as the science of medicine. So I think that's one of the trademarks of the University of Rochester. We do have an MD PhD program. We also have master's programs in public sciences. And then our students can take 5 years and get a master's in medical education, a master's in business administration with a health sciences a health economics focus. And then we also have a master's in public health. So lots of different ways to go beyond just the basic 4 years. I think also that it's of note that we are in the top 15% of primary care schools, so that 15% of our students, 15% in the U.S. News and World Report, schools have primary care. It's at the top. And then we're in the top 25 in the U.S. News and World Report for research. So we're very much a balanced approach, and I think that's also of note. So if you just think you're going into medicine, you're going to be a primary care doc, and then you get turned on to academic medicine or research, you can easily switch that focus. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Neal Schiller. I'm the Senior Associate Dean, University of California, Riverside School of Medicine, the newest medical school on the West Coast. So we're beginning our third class, recruiting for that at the moment. We are a community-based medical school, which means that we have a unique mission. And our mission is to improve the health of the communities that we serve, specifically the medically underserved communities. We are looking for students who espouse that mission and share that mission with us. We have a completely holistic review process, so every single file gets completely reviewed. We are looking for students who want to choose us as much as we choose them. We're a community of faculty, staff, physicians, and students who share a passion to serve and help those who need care. We don't own a big, large medical center. We are a community-based medical school. We work with all the hospital and clinic partners in our communities. We place our students in medical practice in an apprentice model in the third week of medical training. We think it's extremely important that our students begin to learn medicine at the physician's side, and learning basically not only to memorize all the material they need to become a physician, but to learn to apply it as soon as possible. If you have a passion for this and you are committed to service, please look for us, University of California, Riverside School of Medicine.
My name is Richard Weisman, and I'm the Associate Dean at the University of Miami School of Medicine in Miami, Florida. We're a very, very large private medical school. We're going to be graduating our 65th class this year. One of our greatest attributes is that we are immediately surrounded by 3 large medical centers. Jackson Memorial Hospital, which is one of the largest inner-city public safety net hospitals, the Miami Veterans Administration Hospital, and the University of Miami Hospital. We're one of the few medical schools in the country to own our own hospital. And this allows us, from the very beginning, to do a lot of our training right at the bedside. And all of our professors in the medical school are attendings in one of our 3 hospitals, so that we're allowed to go from the classroom in the morning right to the hospital bedside in the afternoon, and it becomes kind of a working laboratory. We also have one of the largest research facilities, and the University of Miami is one of the top-ranked research centers, allowing us to integrate research into our educational process. In addition to having an MD program, we have a rather large collection of combined degree programs. And currently we're receiving NIH funding for a 4-year combined MD, MPH program, where students within the same 4-year period of time will get not only their MD degree, but an additional degree that takes 2 years, their MPH, and be able to graduate in that same 4-year period of time. We also have a 5-year MD, MPH program, a 5-year MD, MBA program, a 6-year MD, JD, where you can graduate with degrees in both law and medicine, and an 8-year MD, PhD program. This allows the students to really add to their curriculum and graduate with multiple degrees. We have a very, very large emphasis on community service, and we define our community as not only being South Florida, but into the Caribbean, into South America, into the Middle East. And students will go on an average of 4 to 6 international missions with faculty and other students to complete a lot of their rotations internationally and be able to kind of keep an eye on what's happening worldwide. We receive over 8,000 applications each year, so it's a very competitive process. And we really are looking for, again, students that are a very, very good match, who really want the clinical side of medicine and the research side of medicine to be their most important goal. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dr. Chan. Greetings from Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm Dean of Admissions at the University of Utah School of Medicine. It feels great to be back here in California. I grew up here. When I got off the plane, I went to In-N-Out. It's been a long time. So there's just 3 points I want to share with you. Number one, we're increasing our class size. We are a state school. The vast majority of our seats are reserved for Utah residents. However, we do have some dedicated non-resident spots, and Californians are always second largest pool after Utahns. Number two, what are we known for? Our medical school is known for innovation. And I can just give you an example. We're experimenting with different ways. How do medical students learn? How do they become doctors? And we've implemented group testing as just an example to give you. What does that look like? All right, so let's pretend it's your anatomy test. You take it individually for 2 hours. You turn that in. That's worth 90% of your grade, 9-0. Then you get the exact same test back, and with a predetermined group of 3 to 4 other medical students, you take the test over. You talk through it. What'd you put on question 12? Oh, I put the pancreas. Why'd you put the pancreas? The med students teach each other, and that's our way of inspiring collaboration, cooperation, not so much competition between our med students. Lastly, number three, again, we believe very strongly in the holistic review model, something we're very proud of. How it works, it looks different at every medical school. How it works at our med school is that we think each and every one of you in this room, you have a story to tell, you have a journey. You've overcome trials, tribulations to get to exactly this point. Those experiences, that transcends any numbers associated with you, all right? So when you apply to our medical school, there is screening, but if we do offer you an interview, none of the interviewers know your MCAT or GPA. All the selection committee members, anyone who votes, does not know your MCAT or GPA. They focus on your essays, your personal statements, your letters of recommendation, what you write. And that's how we view you as a whole person, going back to holistic review. So I'm very excited to be here. It's my first year here, and I look forward to questions.
My name is Kevin Watt. I'm Assistant Dean of Diversity and Inclusion at Wright State University Boonshoft School of Medicine in Dayton, Ohio. I'm also a graduate of Wright State, so I think I bring some perspective from having been a student at the institution as well as being part of the faculty there. I think a big part of what we do at Wright State, as many of the others have said, is we are a community-based medical school, and we've been doing community-based medicine a lot longer than most of the medical schools. Not that we do it better, we just have been doing it longer. And I think the advantage of community-based medicine in some respects is that we have 7 clinical facilities that you will rotate in, and you can get it and do it a number of different ways. You can go to the big trauma center, or you can go to the very small community-based hospital. And the advantage of those things are when you become 4th-year students, you're going to be applying to residency, and if you've only seen it in one university hospital style, you're not sure if you like the other styles. And the advantage of having these community-based medical schools is that you're going to see a lot of different varieties of ways things are done. And if you like the busy 1,000-bed hospital, that's the kind of residency you apply to. And if you don't like that, you've been able to see in the smaller communities which kind of facility you like. So I think that's one advantage as you think about where you want to go to medical school that you should think of. We have the oldest VA hospital in America, so it's going to be a stable environment. It's not the same actual hospital building, but it's still the same name at the VA in Dayton. We are a state-supported school as well, but as many states have done, we take a lot of out-of-state students. I think this year was our largest class size. 40% of our class was out of state. Most of our underrepresented medicine students are from out of state. So I think you will have a good shot as anywhere, whether you're in state or out of state, particularly for the minority students. We have introduction to clinical medicine beginning in the first week of medical school. So you start learning histories and physicals and exam skills when you first show up. And so you have 4 days of class, and on Fridays you have introduction to clinical medicine and get to feel like you're a doctor a little bit. But I think that's enough, and we'll probably continue with the program. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much. So now everybody in the audience has a little bit of context, and hopefully you've written down some of the schools that you would like to learn more about if you feel that you'd be a good match. So the first question that I'd like to direct to Dean Weisman. One of our most popular questions online is how admissions professionals view applicants who have completed a majority of their pre-medical coursework at a community college, and what students can do if that somehow makes them less competitive or more competitive, or how you view that.
One of the things that we will do is take a look at the competitiveness of the school where you're completing your academic prerequisites. And what's even more important often than the grade that you obtain are the letters of recommendation that you get from those programs and your masteries of those particular topics. And that often can be seen in your MCAT scores, because we very often will see students coming out of Ivy League schools who have the same exact MCAT score in a particular topic as somebody coming out of a community college. Well, they've mastered at that same level, at least based upon what is felt to be important. So that what happens is that it's not necessarily where you go, it's how you take advantage of it and what you're able to come away with. So that we will accept certainly students who have done well in a community program and have at a community college or even a junior college. And that will be evidenced by, again, their letters and how they perform in the standard exams.
Excellent. A follow-up question for Dr. Chan is, how much weight do admissions professionals put on an applicant's background? For example, being a first-generation college student.
I think they put a lot of weight into it. Going back to the holistic review model, I mean, we look at you, we look at your background. We try to understand who you are. You know, you put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that application, and we take that very seriously. All admission professionals take that very seriously. There's multiple reviews, multiple people read what you write. And so if you are a first-generation student, if you attend a community college, write about that experience, talk about it, talk about how you're going to give back to the profession. What I tell everyone is, you know, those personal statements you have, those are, you know, the one with the National AMCAS service, those are blank. That's your chance to talk to all the mission committees, all the professionals out there. Use that experience to talk about why you should be a doctor.
Excellent. Dr. Samuelson? Director Samuelson, if you could elaborate on or answer a new question of what is your favorite interview question?
One that I do enjoy doing or using is, what book have you recently read, and what did you think about that book?
Do any of the other panelists want to comment on their favorite interview question?
Well, I'm not that nice a person. I usually like to ask them about, to tell me about a clinical experience they've had since they submitted their application to medical school. And what that does is it really tells you about a person who is doing it for the right reasons because they love medical school. If all of a sudden you see kind of that deer in the headlights look and you know, well, I was doing my clinical experiences because I had to, but now that I've submitted my application, I don't have to do it anymore. That's telling me more than any words that the student would be able to provide.
I like to ask the students what sort of trials and tribulations or roughest things that they've had to come through in life and how they've come through those things. And I think it's important to think of those. And sometimes it's not that you have had to have a rough life, but there has been some patch in your life that you've had to come through, and you need to be able to verbalize that. And it'll show some compassion in how much you've thought about what's really going on in your life. So those are questions I think that you really have to, those sometimes get a little personal, but those are things we need to know to find out who the real person is.
So here's a tip. The questions that we're really concerned about are on your secondary application. And not a lot of students pay enough attention to this, because this is where some of our most important questions actually are written down and giving you time to think about them and answer them. But clearly the thing that we most like to know is, how do you fit our mission? We are looking for students who fit the mission. So the most important question is, do you fit our mission?
I like to ask questions that cause the applicant to do some self-reflection, to go beyond just kind of the surface things that are contained in their application, things that, because as medical students, we all appreciate this in our medical students, you're going to be asked to do self-evaluations when you're a medical student and find areas that you need to improve upon. So have you done that as an undergraduate student? So asking questions like, if I could talk to your friends, what's something that your friends would say that you need to improve upon? Or if I could talk to your instructors that have seen you in the classroom, you're on the verge of going to medical school, what do you think your instructors would say is something you need to improve upon as a student to be more effective or efficient as a future medical student? So to see if the students can kind of get below some of the, like I said, superficial things found in the application.
The next question for Dr. Watt is, what is considered good clinical experience prior to submitting an application? Is shadowing, CNA, EMT, or medical receptionist, et cetera, considered good experience?
I personally think that you have to do some shadowing. I think part of that is you need to show the admissions committee that you have some knowledge of what it takes to be a clinical practitioner. I, however, do not think that 80 hours of shadowing is a good use of your time, standing over somebody's shoulder looking like you're interested, and after 2 hours of this, you're kind of bored because you're not really qualified to do anything. So personally, I like to see people go out to free clinics. Reach Out Clinic is a clinic that we offer in town for uninsured and underinsured folks, where you can start learning to do some triaging, taking some blood pressures, those kind of things where you can actually get your hands wet. And so the EMTs, I think those are very good clinical experiences. We had an admissions committee meeting Wednesday, and somebody said, well, they didn't have any shadowing. Well, they were a New York City paramedic for the past 8 years. So, I mean, I don't know how much shadowing you want me to do if I'm working full-time, putting in lines and doing all these things. So those are, I think, very good experiences. The CNAs that we see out there nowadays, I think it all tells you have some patient care experience. And so some sort of patient care experience, I think, is important. For me, shadowing is a minimal because, I mean, I can't stand there and do nothing for too long.
I'll just jump in. At the University of Utah School of Medicine, we draw a very clear line between physician shadowing and patient exposure. And like what Dr. Watt said, physician shadowing is more of a passive experience. You're kind of in the room. You're learning about this profession. Every year across this country, and I'm sure all my colleagues up here can attest to, we have med students walk away because they didn't realize, like, yeah, it's stressful being a doctor. It's kind of hard with the call schedule and dealing with insurance company. It's not all blood, guts, and glory. So before you decide to go to medical school, you need to figure out, is this the life for me? That's why we encourage physician shadowing. Now, patient exposure or patient care, that's a more active experience. You're getting your hands dirty. There's not necessarily a doctor in the room. And again, it goes back to the core question, do you like being around sick people? Do you like helping people? Because again, we've had med students leave our med school who tell us, like, I didn't realize that I didn't like being around sick people, and they withdraw. And guess what? Before you apply to med school, you need those experiences. That really determines who you are.
Okay. Dr. Schiller, the next question is, how would you describe your school's learning environment? Does the curriculum encourage cooperation among students, and what type of student would fit best into your school?
So we have a integrated human biology disease curriculum. It's pass-fail, first 2 years. We have a maximum of 10 didactic lecture hours a week. So we do a lot of small group workshops, a lot of problem-based learning. So it's group study. Our doctoring is our cultural competency program every other week. Also in small groups, that's when we learn how to do history taking, clinical skills in small environment, and then our longitudinal ambulatory care experience. This is where we place our medical students out in the community. That's usually one-on-one. So we're looking for students who are quite social, quite collaborative. We expect students to help each other, learn the information. There's some students who are great in anatomy and some who are not. There are some who are better in physiology and some are better in biochemistry. So each student can contribute. We are a very diverse institution, and diversity embraces the widest variety of terminologies. But essentially, we're looking for medical students who will work and collaborate with each other. We believe in ourselves as a community, and we feel that the medical students, the staff, and faculty are a community who works collaboratively together.
If I could say, our learning environment at Wright State is, when I was a medical student, we took 4, 5, 6 classes at one time, and it was a nightmare. But The way we do things now in the first year, we do it on a block scheduling, so you take anatomy, and that's it. In the next course, they just will start, when we go back on Monday, they'll take molecular basis of disease, or MBM, which is like biochemistry. So the first year is a block scheduling, so you only have one class that you're responsible for, and then it's also have team-based learning sessions along with that. So during the first year, you don't have to worry about 5 and 6 classes and all these kind of things. You have one group of core curriculum that you're involved with at a time. And then the second year, you go into systems-based learning, which is still integrated with the team-based learning approach.
At the University of Miami, we're using a competency-based, student-directed curriculum, which allows you to move on from one skill to the other, demonstrating that you're competent at that. It also is student-directed, which allows students that are having trouble in a particular area to spend an extra couple weeks becoming competent, and students that are proficient in a particular area to move rather rapidly through it, allowing them to have additional time for areas that they have difficulty with, or to pick up extra areas of specialization along their way. So it's something that is very much in the hands and control of the students and allows them to know exactly what they have to do to be considered competent in a particular area and to meet those competencies.
Excellent. Director Samuelson, our last question before we open it up to the audience is, what non-obvious issues do you think might face older applicants who are coming from, this will be their second career, who are in their 30s and their 40s?
I think that for the older medical student, they have more things to balance in their lives. They may be married, they may have children, so they have to be able to balance the demands of medical school and being in school again after being out in the workforce. So I think the balance can be difficult, but I also think that they're a little bit more mature. They've experienced life. They know how to really target and schedule their lives to be successful. So I think it's very doable.
Would any other panelists like to comment on this before we open it up to the floor?
I think it's great because those students are focused. Their family understands what is and what isn't going on, and they don't get sidetracked as often. Life continues, but I think they're focused, and we probably have 3 to 6 people that are over 30-something years old in every class.
Excellent. So for those of you who, while listening to this, have come up with some perhaps more specific questions or questions that were not asked, if you could line up one at a time behind each of the microphones. You may address the entire panel or a specific panelist. It's your choice.
Can we just go ahead? Mm-hmm. Great. Hey, my name's Elias Pendulin from UNLV. And in contrast with the previous question, what are some of your thoughts as, on students that are a bit younger, like 21 years old or 20 years old, applying to medical school? Does that play any role when making a decision?
I think if they have completed the requirements, they're probably to a certain degree fairly mature for that situation. And if they've graduated or they have the required courses, I don't see any problem with it. We had admitted one student, maybe he's a third year, is starting his MD, Ph.D., but he came in, I think he was 18 years old.
We actually have, through our undergraduate program, what we call a combined BSMD program, where students can either do 2 years or 3 years in the undergraduate before they start medical school, so that we're very familiar with having students who are often 17 years old when they're starting medical school. And the test that we use is maturity and their ability to deal with some of the really complex situations that a first-year medical student or a second-year medical student are going to be asked to do. And if they have that level of maturity, it's wonderful because they'll have that many more years in their career of medicine that they're adding it on.
I have a kind of like specific question for Dr. Weisman. So, what specific thing that you consider as a significant change for reapplication?
I'm sorry, can you ask the question one more time?
I just would like to add what kind of specific thing, for example, that you consider as a significant change for reapplication?
In somebody that was unsuccessful the first time, and remember there's a lot of people that are going to be unsuccessful the first time because we're essentially having to accept 120 students out of 8,000 applicants. And that doesn't mean that 7,780 of them were not qualified. It means that we simply didn't have seats. So a lot of times what we're looking for is, what have you done in that past year? And have you maintained that level of interest? Have you made yourself a stronger applicant? And a lot of times it's just applying earlier in the cycle and getting that application looked at a little bit sooner by the admissions committee when perhaps there are still seats available that'll make a difference. So that a lot of times the reapplicants have a very easy road because it's noted on their first year's application that, gosh, we'd love to be able to take this person, we just don't have room. And the fact that they have waited perhaps another year because they're so interested in your program or your area or your location, it can become actually a benefit for them that they're making a reapplication. Now, if they were not accepted because they had something that needed to be fixed, what we'd like to see is that that little area of weakness, that they've made some strides in fixing what would have been a deficit.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor.
Piggyback on that, I would also recommend when you're going to reapply, rewrite your essays for your personal statement and the secondary applications. No, you don't have to completely redo the content of the personal statement, but don't cut and paste it from the previous years. Because if you apply to our medical school, we can go back and look at the previous year's application. Often, like what Dr. Weisman says, we want to see what was different compared to the current application. And we can see if you pasted in your previous personal statement to the current one. And I think that kind of looks lazy if you're doing that, because you will have changed in that year or 2 years since your previous application. And oftentimes, like he said, you might want to zero in on things that you've improved since that previous application, or you found the deficits during that last application that you've now targeted and identified and strengthened. So I would recommend rewriting some of those things.
Yeah. Thank you, Doctor.
Hi, my name is Abby, and my question is for every member of the panel. And my question is very specific to my case. I have a bachelor's degree, and it's Bachelor of Music in Music Literature from a developing country, and my question is, will that satisfy the bachelor requirement for admission in your school?
I think medical school, at least as far as I know, does not require a bachelor's degree. It does require a certain amount of hours and a certain core biology, chemistry, physics, and some math. But I don't think you have to have a degree to go to medical school. In most places, I don't think you guys probably realize that.
On the AMCAS application, they separate out your science coursework versus your other coursework, the non-science coursework. So we'll be able to, whether you're a music major or English major or biomedical engineering, we'll be able to see that science coursework separated out. And if you've been successful in the sciences, that's what we're going to kind of key in on. But if you're successful there, then that shows us that you have the chops to handle the sciences. Because we're not teaching music down our hallways, we're teaching the sciences, but that's really cool backgrounds to come in with because it adds a lot of dynamic to all of our classes and have those different backgrounds and interests in our students.
Certainly students that have met all of the science and math prerequisites and yet have their undergraduate degree in something other than biology, chemistry, or biochemistry, which is what we see all of the time, are very valuable to us because they add dramatically to the culture of the class. And they bring to the profession of medicine additional interests that they'll be able to draw from, that patients will be able to relate to. So that I think it's absolutely wonderful to get as many people in the class as we possibly can who are not your typical straight down the road biology majors.
Thank you very much.
My name is Shireen, and this question is for any of you members of the panel who have public health offered at your school or an emphasis on learning about culture and community. My question is mostly with regard to once a student is in med school, how common is it for your students to have some type of international experience during their 4 years there? And what would that look like?
Well, at Wright State, we have a global health initiative, which I think a lot of medical schools have at this point. You can get involved or not get involved. There's a track, you can just be part of the global health track, or you can get a certificate in global health. And so after the freshman year of medical school, the students will go in the summer, either to Jamaica or to Swaziland, alternate years. It's already set up every year. They go back and forth. And then they have some other coursework in the evenings that they do from a global health perspective, which is tied in a little bit to the healer's art. But during their 4th year, they have some electives that they're required to do if they want to get a certificate in it. And probably 60% of our students right now are getting this global health certificate, and which requires them to set up some what we call student-initiated electives during their 4th year, and they are going all over the world doing rotations.
In our public health program, there are 3 major areas of interest. One of them is global health, one of them is preventive medicine, and the other is population-based medicine, all of which are important. As far as the global health, even for the students that are not in the MD and PH program, virtually 100% of the students will have gone on at least one global health international mission. Population health is incredibly important because what we're realizing now is that, like it or not, we are responsible for treating populations. And we can see particular risk factors in groups of people, be it obesity or be it some genetic link that seems to predispose somebody to a disease. Preventive medicine is clearly the most important component of public health right now, because Hippocrates said several hundred years ago, it's so much easier to prevent somebody from developing a disease than trying to fix it once they have it. And that's really why public health has become such an important part of medical education today.
At Rochester, 40 to 50% of our students are involved in international medicine. We have a global health pathway. We have 5 certificate pathways, one of which is global health. And you would designate that during your 1st year and have experiences with international communities within Rochester, and then would also be going abroad. But in addition to that, we also have experiences for our students to go abroad, either after 1st year during the summer, or because of our early clinical exposure, they have elective time during 3rd year, so some of our students will go during 3rd year as well. Our students have gone to 6 of the 7 continents and to 40 different countries.
At CASE, our students get a summer vacation in between 1st and 2nd year, and like all the other schools, our students can do things internationally. We have a group that goes to Peru every summer, but students aren't restricted to what we have. There's a lot of resources through the AAMC that students find, or through medical organizations online that they go to. And then typically our students, if they're going to do things overseas, they usually do it at the end of their 4th year. Our students are living in the hospitals in the 3rd year, and they get their life back in the 4th year. But they realize they want to graduate with a job, so they are wrapping up residency things. But if you get all your graduation requirements completed, there's usually some flex time at the end of they can plan things to go ahead to go overseas at the end of their 4th year.
So at Case Western, it's mostly students take their own initiative to find the programs that they do?
Yeah, we don't have integrated plans like some of these other programs do, but about 30% of our students over the course of 4 years will do some type of international experience.
Okay.
And just to echo off Case, we have 5 official sites affiliated with the University of Utah. But if you speak a different language, or if you're just interested in a different part of the world, we just work with the students individually to set that up. And our 5 are Ghana, Kenya, Peru, which seems to be popular, and China and India. So we have 5 hospital systems we work with.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dean, and I have a question regarding international students. Do you guys observe them with a different scale than a regular domestic applicant? And this is to the entire panel.
We accept, I think you'll find most private schools accept international students. We don't evaluate you any differently during the application process. The difference comes into play when you get into financial aid. So we just tell students, international students, apply as you will. We'll review you the same way as we will as U.S. citizens, but you have to have the understanding that if you're accepted, you're going to have to work through the process of financial aid because you won't be eligible for federal assistance. So that's usually the main hurdle that international students run into. But through the application process, we don't evaluate you any differently.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Rachel, and I have a question for all of you. Recently, have you guys accepted anyone from Postbac programs? And if so, which ones do you think best prepare students for your med school?
So I very much value students who've been through Postbacs, and we have a Postbac program that I run at Riverside. The UC consortium is quite strong. I have found excellent students from all of those Postbacs. There's actually a whole array of good Postbac programs across the country. So I think that's a wonderful experience for those who need a little extra time to sort of prepare for medical school.
I think it's hard to identify like which one's the best one, or because Patricia and I looked at each other like there are so many really good ones out there. Look at some of the amenities that they offer, like as far as advising. How large are their classes? Do they write committee letters for you? What other types of courses are available to you in the Postbac program? Do they advise you to take upper level science advanced coursework if you can fit that in? Do they offer research component with it to go along with it? So I think those are, just look at some of the amenities, not so much the names, because like we said earlier, like Dr. Weisman said, as far as a community college, we kind of don't care where you go, it's how you did when you were there.
One note of caution I have about Postbac programs, you have to be really careful about what you're trying to say to the admissions committee. A lot of people go to Postbac programs and they write in their personal statements they want to prove to us that they can handle the work, because a lot of time the Postbac programs are kind of integrated with the med school. And our committee would, I mean, if you need to bring up your GPA, that's a good route to go, but if I had to recommend anyone doing a Postbac program versus doing a year of dedicated community service and giving back, I would always advocate for doing community service, not necessarily just doing this to show the admissions committees that you can handle the work. Like, there's, like, to echo my colleagues, there's so many more qualified applicants than we have positions. It's never a question of, do we think you can handle the work?
I think for me, and I think I'm in a unique situation, I went to a Postbac program. I went to a program in Carbondale, Illinois called Med Prep, and I went there not because I wanted to prove, I needed to prove everything. My undergraduate grades were not where they needed to be, and so from that standpoint, I needed to go to that program to get my life together. And even then, it's a bunch of party people who ended up at the Postbac program, and still having parties really wasn't making any sense. So there was a point where I made a decision that I needed to, get it in gear, and the advisor said, well, what are you really doing here? And here, 20 years later, over 20 years later, after I'd been to that program, they invited me to come back to be the speaker this past spring at their spring banquet, and I had those advisors and all the faculty that were still living, they mostly still lived in that area, to come and support me in that. And so I think what you got to look at is, why do you need to go to the Postbac program? Is it an MCAT thing? Is it I need the requirements? And you have to tailor that based on what your own individual application looks like.
One of the more common questions that I'm asking, I thought you were going to head in that direction, is the question that we get about which do you look at more highly, the Postbac or somebody going back for a master's? And I think that that is a very, very important thing for anybody who's considering a Postbac to think about. And what I usually tell them is that if you are still, after the Postbac, unable to get into medical school, many times having gotten that master's or being head in the direction of that master's will allow you an entry into some allied medical field or some research area, or allow you to move forward with your Ph.D. in that particular area. It becomes an automatic kind of a plan B or alternative pathway if it becomes necessary. So that I think that what one ought to do before considering a Postbac is do some serious soul searching and ask, will one more year make me a more competitive applicant? Or do I need to have kind of a fallback plan where if I go ahead and get my master's, I'm well on my way to getting my Ph.D. in an area that will allow me to still have a wonderful career allied to medicine?
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Kevin, and I'm a third year in UC Davis. And so this is a general question for the panel. I don't know if I should take a gap year or not, and will I be looked differently if I take a gap year as opposed if I don't? Is there any benefit if I don't take a gap year?
I'm a big fan of the gap year. If there's things in your life that you want to do before you go to medical school, go do them. Because once you start medical school and you get on that train, it doesn't stop, or it's very difficult to get off. So if there's things you'd like to do or you just didn't have a chance to do while you've been an undergraduate student, then take the time to go do those things, because it will only enhance your application, I think. You bring more to the table when you come to interview. We have more things to talk about. We say, hey, what have you been doing this last year? You graduated in 2015, now it's 2016. What have you been doing? So we can talk about those things. And oftentimes, those gap years allow you to grow and have more worldly experiences. You're off on your own, paying your own bills, working with people you have nothing in common with. And that way you can kind of bring more, as I said, bring more things to the table at the interview. So if that's something you want to do, we're big fans of it. Advocate for it.
Okay.
I would completely agree. In fact, most of our medical students have not just completed college and just ran into medical school. Many have done other things. And so I think my thought is, A, you should apply when you're ready to enter medical school. And B, I would think very seriously, what are you going to do with your gap year? Because it would make you a much stronger applicant, depending upon what you choose to do.
Nationwide, if you look at the statistics, the average age of medical students when they start is rising at all institutions. It's becoming more common for people to take time off. And I was in this, this conception of this audience many years ago, and life is not a race. And I know it's hard to think about that sitting there, and some of you already have your next 10 to 15 years mapped out, and most of you probably include medical school in that. I think that's awesome. And I was right there, but life happens. And so I echo my colleagues. I think gap years are fantastic. It kind of depends on what you do and how you apply yourself. Again, we are looking for service. People are giving back to the community. We're not looking for people backpacking through Europe who are trying to find themselves. You understand what I'm saying? So if you take a gap year, have it be something meaningful. Do something, give back, give back. That's what I keep on saying.
That's the absolute most important thing, is how you spend the gap year and what you've accomplished during that period of time. What we don't want to see is, well, I kind of was procrastinating and didn't get my applications done, so I thought I'd, just kind of sit around and now I got them ready. So, yeah, I had a gap year, but what did you do? And they kind of didn't do much of anything. Clearly, there's some people that do some amazing things during that gap year that allow them to be better prepared for medical school, and then it becomes a plus. You don't want to be on the other side of the table where it looks like you just kind of were sitting around for a year. That's not going to help.
You usually have to convince your parents. You don't have to really convince us about gap years. It's usually about convincing your parents and letting them know that I am going to apply to medical school someday. The admissions people say it's okay. But like he said, everybody said, you have to be doing something meaningful.
Don't just sit home and do nothing. If your parents are letting you stay home and you have a job, you probably need to pay them some money so that when you explain that you stayed home, you still had some responsibility, because that's part of what we're looking at.
The only cautionary, I agree with everything that's been said. I think it does enhance your application. If you have loans from your undergraduate school, that timeline starts ticking down. So if you take gap time, you need to put that into the equation.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Hi there. I'm Jeremy, and my question kind of relates to the last question for the entire panel. If a student did choose to take a gap year and decided to travel or pursue a hobby or some passion of theirs, would they be looked at less favorably to somebody who took a gap year and did research or clinical volunteering?
It really depends on what you did before that. I mean, many times students take a gap year because it provides them an opportunity to get other experiences that they feel are important for them in becoming a better physician. So if you've done all that before you did your gap year, then it's probably not as big an issue. But again, most of us look at what you do at the gap year and how that speaks to what you're going to be doing as a physician.
I think you have to be able to write it, express why you did it. And it has to make sense to you first. And if you can make sense to yourself, I think it'll make sense to other folks why you wanted to do whatever that is. But you have to be able to express it and feel comfortable expressing it, knowing that there may be some point of contention. I think that's just the way I would look at it. But if you believe it, then own it.
Be prepared to answer the question, how did this year make you a better medical student or will make you a better physician? And if you're having difficulty answering that, you probably went down the wrong road.
All right, thank you.
Hi, this is just a question for the whole panel. I was just wondering, what would you consider like an average GPA for acceptance versus an outstanding one, and how much importance do you place on it in comparison to like extracurricular activities?
Well, we look at a broad range of GPAs, but we try to put it in context with the rest of the application. I'm always hesitant to, though, because I meet some applicants who have had unsuccessful applications in my office in the summertime, and they say, but I did all this great, extracurricular activities. Doesn't that give me more points than my GPA? I'm like, not as much as you'd like, because we have to kind of look in the crystal ball and see, are you a viable medical student? And your academic history is really the only thing we can look at to see, are you going to be able to handle a rigorous medical school curriculum? Because if you kind of know it as a medical student, now you're kind of dangerous. So we have a responsibility to evaluate you critically, but also to try to put the application in context. We've had students that have had lower GPAs. They've had great MCAT scores, but they've had life experiences. Are they coming in with their Ph.D.? Maybe their undergraduate GPA was really low in their undergrad 10 years ago, but they've gone on and since got their Ph.D., did some really cool, amazing things. But we have to put it all in a context.
I think it's really important to kind of take a look at the entire applicant. Certainly, GPAs are going to help us to appreciate how well you're going to do in the first and second year and how big a struggle it's going to be. MCAT certainly help us predict, our Part 1 board's going to be easy for you, or do you have difficulty with standardized testing? We have a lot of people in the class. This year we accepted a handful of Navy SEALs, and we've got a couple F-18 fighter pilots and musicians from the New York Philharmonic Orchestra. You don't even want to know what their GPAs were. They're not pretty. But you've got people that are accomplished, that have shown through dedication and hard work that they're able to rise to the top. That is, to us, as important as that 3.7 or 3.8 GPA. So that if you can say to the admissions committee, yeah, my GPA isn't the greatest and my MCATs aren't going to win you any prizes, but look what else I've done in my life. I've got this research, I've got this amazing other accomplishment in my life, you're going to be fine. What you don't want to do is be the person that has a kind of mediocre GPA and a lowish type MCAT and not much else to show for it, because there probably are going to be other people that are going to take that seat away from you.
I think there's a table. I think if you guys look at the data on the AAMC website on the data analysis and facts or something, the facts and figures, that'll show you GPAs and MCAT scores and those who got into medical school, at least one acceptance, and the graduation rates. And I think that will help guide you from that standpoint, just to see, because there's about 8% of the country with a 3.8 and 39 to 45 MCAT that don't get in anywhere in the country. But that's just the fact.
And just to echo our holistic review process, the MCAT GPA is not seen by individuals. To me, my own opinion is it's a matter of faith. I believe in my medical education folk. We have had people matriculate who have had very average MCAT GPAs. It all goes back to their experiences. They're just awesome in some other area. We don't have as many Navy SEALs in Utah, but I look forward to that day, potentially. But yeah, I have faith in my medical education people. People with very average MCAT GPAs who are very passionate about something. They come, they flourish. Medical education is different. Everyone here at this table can talk to you about the different ways of teaching our curriculum, and they graduate as surgeons, they graduate as pediatricians, they move on. And so, again, that's why I was echo, you are not your score. You are the sum total of those experiences. That makes you, you.
Okay, unfortunately, we are out of time, so we do not have any more time for questions. I'd like to give one big round of applause to our panelists.